Hi everyone. Today's webinar is about Africa's AI growth story and the case for global alliances. Our special guest today is Alex Tsado, who is the co-founder of Alliance for AI. So let's please welcome Alex.
Hello, Zara. How are you?
Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing great. Beautiful day over here.
Same here. It's like boiling hot, actually. 40 degrees.
Oh my God, that is a lot. I'm in California right now, and it's just warm enough. It's not boiling.
Yeah, the good warm. Over here, like when summer starts, it's just like, it's just straight up.
Oh my God, that's incredible. But I haven't visited myself. I look forward to doing that. Right after this whole lockdown, I'm going to be on a jet throughout, just traveling around the world, and hopefully you'll host me when I come over to your country.
Yes. So what are you going to talk? Can you give us a brief introduction of what you're going to talk about today?
Definitely. As you mentioned with the title, I'll hope to share my perspective and my view on how Africa's AI ecosystem has grown and evolved over time. And hopefully you'll find something in the story that inspires you to do your work and also give us reasons to work together. That will be great from today.
All right. So it's a pleasure to have you here. And I wish you the best of luck for your talk. So the stage is yours now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sarah. So as you've asked, I put together a few slides I was able to find. I'll share it with the folks who are listening now, and I really advise you all. I love to be interactive, and so I'll keep this a bit shorter than usual and invite all of you to keep pasting comments on the chat window so that, Zara and myself will be able to sift through and it will be a smooth conversation. From my end, I'll attempt to share my screen now with this beautiful new application. Great. You should be seeing my blank screen, and I will go ahead and share. So, as I mentioned, you're not the only one who's here to learn. I'm here to learn as well. I would love for us to start off by, you helping me answer some questions. Right? I would love to learn about how do you think about your representation in the world of AI today, all the work you're doing. How is the world seeing your work, and how is it making its way to the global stage? How do you think about your current access to crucial pieces that are important to your development, from education to data, mentors, compute access, a market for your services? I would love to hear what you think about these things. What are the top 3 areas of expertise for AI for people who are around you? And finally, what's your interest in collaborating with Africans? Why would you be interested in doing that, and how are you thinking about it, so that we can figure out how we might maybe facilitate this? You can go ahead and paste your answers on the chat window in front of you, or you can send a tweet to Alliance for AI. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Jumping into the story of Africa's AI ecosystem. Today, we are at a point where Africa holds, where AI in Africa holds great promise. Without the support of traditional systems and structures, private non-profit communities have spun up to train thousands of researchers spread across the African continent. You can see that they are buzzing and they are excited about this new technology and how they might be able to use it to teach the world, something new about how you use this technology. Right now, China is massively focused on, you can say, spying on everybody for security reasons, which are important. And America wants to market you everything that they are selling. But African AI innovators are starting to use AI to solve essential human needs. There's a vision that they can increase access to basic necessities for common people. I can show you some examples. The first one is a company called WeFarm. They've been able to use artificial intelligence to connect over 1 million small-scale farmers using SMS or text message on feature phones that these people have. What they saw was that there are over 500 million of these farmers, so many of them, who are providing access to most of the food on the continent and even the entire world. Maybe only 10% of them have access to the internet, which is where most of you typically deploy AI solutions. But 90% of them have access to text messaging. And so they deploy this service on SMS, connect all these farmers so that they can exchange information that will help improve crop yield, access to markets, just name it. Another example is Rwanda. During this COVID-19 crisis, they've been able to work with and collaborate with foreign companies to develop these robots that they've deployed across key hospitals to help not only with testing patients, but also monitoring them and caring for them as they get well from this disease. It obviously also safeguards the healthcare staff and prevents them from, getting infected. The last example here is InstaDeep. They're based out of, they come out of Tunisia, but have engineering offices across the African continent, from Nigeria to Kenya to South Africa, and in Europe, England, France, and perhaps even Germany. They are one of the top 100 AI companies in the world today. And one of the key use cases they're doing is improving train routing in Europe. Pretty much you've got hundreds of trains moving on tracks across these countries, and you need to make as accurate decisions as possible to minimize slowdown and traffic and wait and even accidents. This is all great, but it wasn't always this way. And there is still a long way to go. I will take you through ancient and modern history that highlights some key individuals and key milestones and key points that have brought us this far and looking to continue shaping Africa's future. I'll be telling you an early version of a story that we're putting together so that this might inspire someone else to go even deeper and produce something more beautiful. Afterwards, we'll start to discuss about ways that we might even collaborate. The history of Africa's contribution to AI. It dates back to ancient times, as far back as 12,000 years ago. And the image you see, it's of the Yoruba people, ancient group from Nigeria who exist today and have people across the world all the way to Brazil. You see, their Ifa tradition was based on binary code. Something I'm sure you are well aware is at the foundation of a lot of modern AI. They created a lot of their symbolism and as a model of communicating with their gods. And when you have a deeper look into it, you will find several binary codes in the form of the 16s and the mages, which are some of their chiefs that they have. It's a truly incredible and inspiring story, and I welcome you to read as, I will be tweeting a link to this presentation afterwards, and you should be able to capture and click and read more about this. The second story it looks at fractals. Fractals and how the world has interacted with these things. Matter of fact, the world thinks that fractals were invented in the 1970s, but nothing could be further away from the truth, because for thousands of years, African villages and settlements have been using fractals to design things from the picture of a lady with the hair plaiting all the way to the way the villages were set up, where you would have repeating patterns, like a square inside another square. This is obviously the basis of modern-day recursive programming, and even interestingly, human biology, as many of our internal organs are actually built in this way, where you have a small shape and a bigger shape and it continues to replicate. In fact, if you did a little exercise right now with me, where you would, if you take your thumb and your index finger and you were able to have a look at it, you will find a crinkle and then a wrinkle within the crinkle, and it keeps going deeper and deeper. There's a link to a video where Professor Ron Eglash actually did intensive research on this point and can tell you more about it. And you can see how that then leads back to where we are today with artificial intelligence. The final picture here is from 1989 of Philip Emeagwali. He's a Nigerian supercomputer scientist. He went through enormous odds to building the most complex supercomputer of his time that he then applied to the oil and gas space to help predict what kinds of particles you will find as you do your exploration. He broke through the 3 billion calculations per second mark and really did pave the way for modern supercomputing. Once again, there's a link to reading about that. Beyond these points, we did some work a couple of months ago to redraw the story of the industrial revolutions, but from an African point of view, especially when you think about African innovation. This story you will find, if you were to Google Africa History AI, you will find the story. It will be one of the first links up there. We go and talk about, the African Renaissance before 1850 and slavery and colonialism. And then it also attempts to describe the centuries that formed the 3 past industrial revolutions and how Africa contributed to them. And then finally, with the next picture, it talks about the future and how it could be a perilous future or one that is filled with opportunity if those of you listening to this today were to act and work not just to improve the quality of life for people in Africa, but quality of life for people all around the world. It's really interesting. I welcome you to check it out. And then, talking about modern AI in Africa, I wanted to take you through a number of the phases that have been crucial in the last decade. I think that one of the first people to really start talking about is Aisha Walcott. She is a researcher at the IBM Research Labs. They were the first ones, at least in recorded history that I've been able to find, to start thinking about artificial intelligence in Africa and how you can leverage it to solve problems. And Aisha is one of those people who was really key to applying it to problems. In that image, you see her in front of some cars. That's because they were applying AI to studying potholes in Nairobi, Kenya, I believe, to understand how they're distributed and help improve the way that the roads were getting fixed and the ways cars were approaching, finding their way through the journey and reducing traffic in the city. Obviously, if you're able to reduce traffic and help people get around faster, you directly improve productivity and the quality of life for people. So much happened in between that time up until 2017 that I will be skipping here. But an incredible milestone was that in 2017, 3 individuals, Mustafa Cissé from Senegal, Timni Jebru, and Redit Abebe, both from Ethiopia, put together a group called Black in AI. It's a group that would bring together Black people interested in AI in America and Africa together to, collaborate on research. That group went ahead to plan the first deep learning Indaba in South Africa in 2017, I believe, that brought together little over 250 researchers from a decent number of countries together to talk about this shared passion. 3 years afterwards, that conference has grown from 250 to over 500 to close to 1,000 people, and has now become the biggest gathering of AI researchers in Africa. A NeurIPS of Africa, you might call it. Post this, most of us is here would move to join Google and be put in charge of the AI lab that Google would open up in Ghana in 2018. This is the time when most people start to think and hear about AI in Africa and say, oh, it started in 2018. But it's good to remember that before this, there was a lot that happened, and there were lots of startups even that are never spoken about who were using AI to do a lot of work in the agri space and healthcare space and do a lot of research. But then the Google work came to build on top of all of this, including the fiber optic cables that were installed in Accra by a South African company. And it was really interesting to see it all come together and then have Google be in Ghana and run some research. Now, with all this time, you might be asking, where was I? I was at this point at NVIDIA. NVIDIA, if you're not familiar, is the company that builds the GPU supercomputers that really made modern day AI possible. AI, the concept of AI had been come up with several decades before, but it wasn't until 2012 when a fellow in Canada applied the GPU to accelerating his ImageNet dataset during a competition that they were having. After this point, many other people started to apply GPUs and they started to accelerate completely AI and make folks not wait months to train AI models, but do it in a few hours. After that point, you all started to work on more complex and complicated models and run them on top of the GPU. And so this is NVIDIA. And I am the cloud guy in the company. I am in charge of deploying all these GPUs on the public cloud, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Alibaba, Baidu. If you use any of these, you've used my babies. Thank you. And they're getting deployed to thousands of companies across the entire world. But then I am listening and I am hearing of what all these great people on your screen are doing. And I'm wondering, how am I not seeing this level of, seeing this traction show up on the internal systems of NVIDIA? And so I started to speak to my directors, and they agreed that they had absolutely no idea it was happening. I then noticed that there was a gap in information sharing and networking. It was all scattered, and so you couldn't really bring it together and know what was going on. This was highly inefficient and adds many, many years to the development that is possible if only you had some sort of aggregation. So our group decides to come together. We had Nicholas Litombe from Cameroon, Lynette Kwambuka from Kenya, Nomso Kana from South Africa, and myself from Nigeria. We come together and recognize that all the work from research needs to be, the work needs to be taken beyond the realms of research to improving lives of people everywhere. And so in 2018, we found Alliance for Africa's Intelligence, Alliance for AI for short, to try and be that center of information and networks so you can find whatever you're looking for as you think about AI in Africa. We start to aggregate the communities who are working with AI, and we start to, work to put together the case for policy change across countries. Some countries were more open to having this kind of conversations, like Tunisia on the north, Kenya on the east, and South Africa on the southern part of the continent. They were open to having conversations about policy, to listen to their people, the researchers, and the communities on what they were doing. You had big hackathons like the one I showed earlier on in Tunisia. It had 1,000 people join that hackathon. They needed a basketball stadium to keep them in one place. And then you had Zindi. Zindi, if you're familiar with Kaggle, Zindi is the Kaggle of Africa, where people can go post up a project along with the prize money, and then it will open up to over 10,000 African AI researchers to work on those problems. And in about a month or two or three, three algorithms are able to win a prize. All of this happens and all the work happens with the government till a huge milestone in 2020 when Alliance for AI, we work with the government of South Africa, and eventually President Cyril Ramaphosa announces that the African Union would have an Africa AI Forum where they will invite key stakeholders across the continent and even outside of it to discuss how Africa might leverage artificial intelligence to drive development on the continent. Also, most recently, as recent as 2 days ago, Africa had its first presence at the ITU's Global AI for Good Summit. It's, like I said, just happened 2 days ago. I welcome you to go find the videos and watch that. We were proud to lobby and secure this for the continent, and we had seven speakers on this particular session, along with a keynote from a minister in South Africa, a director from UNESCO, and myself, talking about how AI can be used to drive development on the continent. So, with Alliance for AI, we continue to see what we can do to, as we say, cultivate Africa's intelligence and be that center of information and network. Our key principles are, we say, hashtag one brain, hashtag love, and hashtag each one teach two, which really means you should be working together if you want to go far. Here are ways you can contact us beyond today, where you can join the mission and see how we can all work together to continue to improve the ecosystems. There is also a book, an ebook we published on COVID-19 solutions that are coming out of Africa over the past couple of months, where the whole world has been hit really bad by this pandemic. Finally, the case for global collaboration. If you remember, I told you about those fractals at the beginning of this talk, with the triangle inside another triangle. It's just the tip of the iceberg. The world thought that those fractals were discovered in the 1970s. But as we said, they were already there for thousands of years in Africa. There is a lot to learn and uncover if only we all could be humble and collaborative as against political and combative. Many great things have happened to the world from the West-induced capitalism. That's an example. However, it continues to expand the wealth gap to a point where we almost definitely will experience a collapse in social structures, given this trajectory. As humanity, we might find a solution in exploring the African robust algorithms for self-organization that are gentle and perhaps more sustainable. We all understand different things about the world, and working together will bring us closer to designing systems that allow us to prolong our time on Earth. With that, I'll pause and look forward to your comments. I'll stop sharing here. Zara, if we can come back to the screen.
Really enjoyed your talk. It was really nice. So I have a few questions to ask you firstly. So what are your goals for the future, like, in terms of Africa, and personally, like, what is it that, you're looking forward to the most right now, especially after the pandemic?
Hmm. Yes, looking forward to the pandemic. It was really tough. It was really tough on everyone across the world. Obviously, people died and passed away, and people are still struggling as we're not done with the pandemic yet. We're still in search of vaccines, and people are still on lockdowns, which is bringing economic challenges. It's really incredibly tough time. But then I've heard many great philosophers say things like never waste a good crisis. And so with that said, you're finding innovators stepping forward in this dark time to build solutions that are crucial and critical to helping their places move forward. I see it almost as a almost like sustainability. Countries in Africa are beginning to look inward to find solutions to problems that they are facing. That hasn't been the case since colonialization, right? That did a lot of work to make Africans think outward to find solutions from Europe and other parts of the world and China. But with the COVID-19, that's beginning to change. I'll give an example before I give it back to you. In Kenya, you have the government working with innovators to deploy all of these new AI solutions. One built by my friend John Kamara has just been deployed in several large hospitals in Kenya, combining AI and blockchain to help manage the people who are coming into the hospital, do automated testing, and help with caring for them in the hospitals. This is huge, and I hope it gets sustained after we get out of this pandemic.
That's so for you personally, like, what would you define something that you would, like, you're looking forward to right now, like, aside from what you're doing, like, personally, what are your goals now? I feel like everyone's goals changed after the pandemic. Like, all of us had thought of, like, this year I'm going to be doing this, and now I
Mm-hmm.
think we're all at a standstill. So personally, like, what do you feel? What do you see yourself doing? Maybe like the next year, for example. What is it that you would want to do?
What is funny is that my goals have not changed. Yes, the goals that we set out to achieve in 2018 are were set with a long-term perspective. We were looking at the world 50 years, 5 decades, what's necessary to change things. And we saw a danger that with the rising inequality in the world, by 2030, there will be a break in the whole system. Um, that break is what you guys are seeing now with COVID-19. We saw that 2 years ago, and we thought it would happen by 2025, 2030 was our projections. But it's just been accelerated and it's happened now. So now the rest of the world is seeing it and starting to change the way they think to be long-term. But for us, we're just going to reinforce our work because this is exactly what we were working on before. Was thinking through how do you use technology not just to work on fancy, crazy stuff, build the best robots or fly to space. I mean, not to shit on Elon Musk, but like there are people on Earth who are suffering and don't have access to basic necessities, essential services. And so how do we use technology to provide access to them? That has always been our focus, and that is now incredibly even more important now that people are struggling with this crisis. And so I encourage others to similarly think through all the knowledge you've built, all the technology you now know how to use. How can you use that to create access to basic necessities like food, healthcare, and communicating and being human?
That's actually like one of the best initiatives I've heard. Like, I've spoken to lots of people who, have these crazy, outbreaks in technology. They do like lots of fancy stuff, but like no one really talks about, helping people who are below you. And I think that's a really great initiative. So we have one question as well. So the question is, what are the current AI applications in Africa? I mean, which domains do you work on mostly?
Yes. People are doing lots of crazy, different, incredible things with AI in Africa. But then from our organization, we try to institute some vision and focus by talking about basic human needs, given that over 90% of the population on the continent are struggling with these basic human needs. Before I talk about those, maybe I'll talk about the crazy stuff, right? The Sophia robots. Some of you on the call will be familiar with the Sophia robot. She's the most popular robot on Earth. She received a citizenship from, I think, Saudi Arabia or something a couple of years ago. And she's been traveling around the world speaking on conferences, and she's very popular. She was built in Ethiopia by a great friend, Getnet Asefa. They worked on the brain of the entire robot with their company that is called ICOG Labs. And so that's just really phenomenal to see that that's coming out of Ethiopia. And with GetNet, his dream is built out of the point where he's like, the first human, what do you call them now? The remains and the skeletons, I forget the real name of that stuff, they came out of Ethiopia. And so life, as we know it, started in Ethiopia. And so he thinks like the future of robotics and AI should also come from Ethiopia. And so his group is building these things. They've given the world the Sophia robot. They're currently working on other things to continue to push and drive, human intelligence and get us towards what many people fear with the incredible robots. But GetNet is excited about that, and he keeps building that. But outside of his work, you then have the Africans that are using AI to do things like agriculture, because the population of the continent is growing really quickly. You might not be aware, but by 2034, Africa will have about 1 billion people in the workforce, which would be the largest anywhere in the world. And so these people, first they need to eat, and then they need to work. And so you have a number of African startups in AI who are trying to apply the technology to reduce the losses that small-scale farmers are facing and help them get to market faster. These are some of the applications. And of course, with COVID-19, you have a lot of startups using AI to try and diagnose disease, especially in places where there are not enough doctors.
Okay, so that was like a great talk, and I loved all the questions and everything that we had. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for giving your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.
Before we pause, do you have any answer to any of the questions I asked in the beginning about how, AI is being used in your country and how you see your access to data and compute, and also ways you think you might be able to collaborate with some of these African innovators?
Okay, so I'm originally from Pakistan, and over here, AI is a really young concept, I would like to say. So there's really few people who are working on AI currently. So we basically, I guess over here, what's more dominant currently is data science and, just basic stuff. Like, for example, for COVID-19, I was part of a project too, which focused on, gathering all the patient data and trying to create an app so people can get alerted about which areas are, COVID sensitive and which are not. So basically, in terms of AI, I guess the most use we see here is, chatbots, for instance. Like, we don't have any fancy robots, or we're not really using AI in agriculture anywhere. Maybe like a few places where, people have a lot of money so they can afford like AI solutions. Otherwise here, I feel right now it's something that's growing. There are small communities, but as of yet, nothing concrete. Mm-hmm. But I really hope we can, have something, because over here too, we have a huge income gap, especially after like the COVID. A lot of people like over here, I'm not sure if this is the case in Africa. So a lot of people over here work on a daily wage. So if they don't go to work a day, they can't eat food. So people like, those people, they need to be accounted for. And right now we don't really do anything for them.
Mhm. I hear you. I hear you. We share a lot. See, there's much more that connects us as human beings across the entire world than divides us. And so when we notice these
Right.
similarities, we can work together. I would just add one statement that before we close, that I hope the presentation I gave doesn't give the impression that AI in Africa is where it needs to be. It's at a point where you have very brave people working on their own to create brave initiatives to as individuals and start to train thousands of people by themselves. But we need to get to a point where their work gets to get scaled by big foundations and governments and global collaboration so that they can fix the issues that these brave individuals have in terms of access to funding, access to compute, access to data. All those are big problems. But, they will keep moving on and fighting on, and hopefully, we get the support that we need. Until that point, let's all collaborate. Countries in Africa, countries in Pakistan, Turkey, and beyond.
Actually, you can help Pakistan, like countries like countries in Africa, for instance, can help, like third world countries in Asia a lot, because I feel we all are really similar. Like our problems are really similar to your problems, because you guys also have a huge population and a huge gap between the workforce and, the population. So if someone actually comes out with an initiative from like one of these countries, it can benefit us all, because it will be like more suitable to us.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. More suitable than a solution built in San Francisco that might be too expensive.
Exactly.
Yes. So with that, I say let's find ways to connect the dots and work together.
Hopefully, yes. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much for today. Thank you for everything you said and your great talk. And we hope we can be in touch with you in the future again.
Yes, that will be fantastic. Enjoy your day and wish a blessed day to everyone
You
on the
too.
virtual conference. Cheers.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you everyone for tuning in to our webinar. Stay tuned for next week when we will be having another exciting webinar. I wish everyone a great weekend and good night. Bye-bye.